welcome to How We Made Your Mother. This is our bonus episode, which we lovingly and faithfully refer to as General Questions. General questions. That was pretty good.
That was actually pretty good.
We're trying to sync this up, and that was one of our more successful efforts. These are questions about episode 7, the Matchmaker, and the cockamouse, which if that is a detail that orients you more into the story,
the more enduring part of it,
enduring story from that episode. So we're talking about the Matchmaker, we're talking about the cockamouse, and we'll hand it over to our beloved producer and friend Alek Lev, who will fire these questions our way.
Thank you very much. I want to start out with a question that I'm piecing together something from dozens, if not hundreds of questions. I think people just like to hear about life on set, like literally on the set. They love to hear about, when people break and you make people laugh, but just anything about where do you keep your script and are you eating in the middle of it? Just those little fun facts that I think people would enjoy hearing, Josh.
Yeah, well,
a little keynote address about how do you make
what's life like on a sitcom set. I mean, we're on stage 22 at the Fox lot in West LA. It's this huge like aircraft hangar basically. If you look up, there's just, it looks like endless wood and beams and cross things in the sky, and there's lights hanging from it beaming down.
Ceiling.
Yeah, hugely high ceiling. Probably not great for your allergies. But
there's like dust from Planet of the Apes flying around in there. I think Planet of the Apes was shot there.
Yeah, and some really classic old Hollywood movies were shot on that stage. Like, it was really fun. And also, when you're on the Fox lot, if you drive in the front gate, you see the huge painted Simpsons mural. There's isn't Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker? There was a thing on there. So,
huge mural.
You drive onto these lots and you feel like you're in old Hollywood kind of immediately. It's really...
And in the shadow of the Die Hard building. Also,
yeah, that's right.
Say that. We looked up and saw the Die Hard building for 9 seasons.
There's a candy cart floating around that has like any candy you could ever imagine, but it also had weren't there piles of scripts that if you needed a script, like the latest revision of the script. So I think like when you're on a show, especially if you're on camera, you have to train yourself. You cannot eat all the candy you want because you will look different by the end of the season than you did when the season started.
It's really true.
I remember I never liked carrying the whole script. I would rip out the 4 pages of the scene, and I would rehearse them. Most of the time I was somewhat off book. Sometimes I wasn't, but I would... Sometimes if it was just a little, I would just isolate what my lines, and I would have them, and then I'd put them under a prop on the desk, like on a desk, or a lot of pages underneath. I'm sure that props and set dressing were just finding pages stuffed in couch cushions and behind pillows constantly, because you forget that you left them there, right? I would have them in my back pocket. Sometimes wardrobe would have to come through and say, "Oh, your script's poking out your back pocket." But the other thing that we would do, especially if there was a scene with all 5 of us, and what's weird is the more successful the show gets, the lazier the actors get, because you get better.
Except for our show.
No, you get better at doing it. You get better at your character. It's so hand in glove. You're just how to play this character. You own the character. They know you own it. So we had this wonderful script supervisor named Janet Kagan, who was British and sassy and hilarious. And she was always right next to Pam behind the monitor, and she marks up like where people got lines wrong or right, or circles takes that Pam says that's a good take, and she'll circle it. And it's a whole like code. She's got colored pencils and all sorts of stuff that I never understood. But we would often gather around, and Janet would run lines with us, and we would do that right before we shot. We would just gather around Janet's podium and learn the lines. Not always. Sometimes we would come in and we'd really have them, but a lot of times you were learning as you went. And then the moment
that was funny to witness, because it would be like you're acting and you're trying, you're working through the scene and working through the lines a little bit, and Shannon would be like eating a bowl of her puffins and just be like, "What do you mean we're breaking up?" And then just go back to it. She'd be doing like,
it was also great.
Lines.
It was also great to hear Janet, this British woman, like reading Barney lines, like reading like the kind of gnarliest Barney lines in this thick British accent. It was really funny.
Very classy.
So yeah, I mean, it was always kind of. I'd walk in if we were there in the morning, you kind of blaze through craft service and maybe grab some oatmeal and a cup of coffee, and you ask Kim craft service, like, what's for lunch?
Breakfast
it's like
rice. Breakfast rice. We would often freak out about how much we love breakfast rice.
Breakfast rice was good. I think that was in the later seasons.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah. But it becomes your home away from home. You have your meals there. You get to know the crew. You get to know the crew's spouses and kids. And I don't know. I think that people, when they watch How I Met Your Mother, I think I've said this before, they think it's 5 people, but it's 75 people.
Yeah.
The set is a buzz with people. And when in between scenes, people are coming along and they're fussing with your face and they're fussing with your hair and they're giving you a note and they're fussing with your collar. There's just a very active life going on set.
Yeah. Yeah. And it really matters what that energy is of that life, what that kind of ecosystem is. And that's a lot of people bringing that energy. And we just had an amazing, amazing crew that just had the warmest energy where everybody felt safe to do their best work. And it was fantastic. Doesn't always happen.
A couple of things I could point out. Among the productions from Stage 22 on the old 20th Century Fox lot, Dr. Dolittle, 1967.
The Dr. old Dolittle. School, yeah.
Planet of the Apes, 1968.
I knew it.
And 9 to 5, 1980.
9 to 5. I forgot about that. 9 to 5. That's a fucking great movie. I did not appreciate that enough at the time, that we were like, they're shooting Dabney Coleman office scenes on there or something. Come on. Yeah. Come on.
Yeah,
that's fantastic.
Something else I noticed, I was only there in the later seasons to sort of put together what we were talking about in the main episode of this episode, talking about this episode of the technology, and Josh, your comfort level. I just remember closing in the seasons 8 and 9, the delta, the time between cut and the cell phone coming out to make a call just got shorter and shorter and shorter. Like, where was that cell phone? How do you already have it in your hand?
Pam's very, very Pam is the loveliest director, the loveliest human. She's the kindest person. She never got mad at anybody once. I never saw her raise her voice, but she would every now and again have these little passive aggressive things she would say and she was always in the right, of course. I don't mean in a bad way, but I remember if she would see you guys or any of the actor, any of the cast, go right to their phone and then be on the phone the whole time. And we're coming up on her calling action again. She would look over and she would just say, "An actor prepares."
I did.
And it was devastating. It's all she had to say. 3 words. An actor prepares.
I did a show for NBC for a season called Rise, which was a really lovely show that Jason Katims created. And I gave myself a challenge that I stuck to the entire time, which was I never brought my phone to set.
I would
have it in my dressing room. I would check it when I had to go do a, costume change or whatever. I never once brought it to set, but it was also when I was learning guitar. So I brought my guitar to set, and we were often filming in this theater, this big auditorium that they actually built on a stage in Greenpoint in Brooklyn. And I would sit in the audience and I would, learn my lines, but I would noodle around on the guitar. I was learning how to finger pick, and I'm pretty convinced giving myself those hours to play the guitar while not being on my phone on a set, it made me such a better guitar player. And I think it made me a better actor, a more present actor on set. So I try to do that. The phone is a focus killer. It's actually prohibits you from getting to know your cast members as well as you could. Yeah,
I agree. It's not good. We are all very seduced. as we talked about earlier today, those phones came out as we were all sort of coming of age there, and it's true. But that was Pam's little trick to get people back. That's wonderful that you made that choice. I hope every actor decides to make that choice. Because
and by the way, I say this as a proper phone addict. I'm not like a. But
that's why it's even more meaningful.
I'm as hooked as everyone. Yeah.
Yeah, and you were by no means any sort of worst offender on the set. I hope it's not coming across that way.
No.
Pam would bust that line out on any actor.
And of course, we appreciate everyone who's currently on their phone right now listening to this
listening
show.
to podcasts is fine.
So in the proper episode, we also shouted out our the not our but the growing HIMYM fans group, and I just want to I posted there. I said, hey, anyone want to ask any questions here? Brittany just had a funny one. She says, not a question, but more of a comment. I was going to start the series again and watch it week by week along with the pod. I'm now on season 7, episode 5.
Just a good take ahead of us. We'll get there.
It's like, I'm just going to have 3 of these potato chips and I'll put the bag away.
And I wrote you this little ditty to sing to you in New York City.
And okay, so obviously we did a lot of cockamouse talking in the proper episode and a little bit of matchmaking, but just to get an origin story there, Devin asks what from the HIMYM fans group. So if you join that group, we might ask your questions. Was this episode based on anything in anyone's real life at the time? Did this matchmaking service actually exist in the area? If so, did anyone actually try it? Was it successful? It sounds like, was there such a thing?
I know, it really does. It's like, yes. It was before electricity, so you had to go to a local matchmaker. We walked past a field full of cows, and there she was. It feels a little dated, but it's there were. I think it came from a genre of feel-good news story. I think that was the original idea because Ted learns about her on Robin's fluff piece on the news. Right, Robin's a reporter. She does a little feature on this woman who has 100% success rate matchmaking people, and I think that came from because there used to be a lot of those stories. It was always like the feel-good fluff piece at the end of the news type of thing. Like there'd be someone who was being like lionized as this person has never failed. And like there was just sort of a genre of like fluff piece like that. I think that's where we got it. I don't think it came from a writer's necessarily like real experience. I don't know how many of the writers were going to matchmakers. Certainly not me.
It does strike me, Craig, that Kobe's job as a local news reporter was such a great way to incite thought.
Totally.
You could.
That's the launch of this whole episode is a news story Robin does. And I love that about it. And that's happened a couple times now. Yeah, it led to a lot of cool stuff. That's how we met her. And I like actually there's kind of a moment I think there's a moment where you kind of are in the news story and then kind of go into the scene a little bit. And it's just, it was a great catalyst for the episode. But I think it began from us thinking this would be the type of story Robin would do. And then we thought they kind of launched this idea. That's how I remember it anyway.
Craig, I don't know if you listen. Amy Poehler has a new podcast called, I think it's called Good Hang.
They're probably talking about ours right now on there. So this is
Well, this is a crossover episode. But she interviews Tina Fey, her old pal, for the first one, and she asks her like, what delights her, and Tina Fey goes into an extended kind of monologue about she lives in Jersey and she's obsessed with her local news reporters, like Saturday local news is like her happy place. Yeah. And this woman, she liked it. It's a man and a woman, but the woman's name is Pat Battle, which is like an incredible name.
Pat Battle. Yeah. Shout out to Pat Battle.
And Pat Battle, like she cast her on 30 Rock, like as part of this, like it was like an association honoring like women in media or something. And Pat Battle was funny. In it. And she says, I invite her to every premiere. And she thinks Pat Battle's a little like, why do you invite? You got to stop. Like you're like obsessed with me. But she just said there's something about like Bob's Books and Pete's Produce. Like she just feels like all is okay with the world, even though the local news can be grisly. But there is something so funny about her love of local news. But it's just really making me think of Robin.
I think it's because, and that's why we loved Robin. That's why we gave Robin that job, because I think stupid fluff pieces like that about New York City make it feel like a small town.
Yes.
And I think that's what we liked about what Robin's job brought to it. It's this giant city, but like Robin will find this little human interest story and it'll sort of shrink New York down to size to sort of fit within stage 22 in Los Angeles where we're shooting. There's something about it. It has this shrinking effect. It's almost like Tina Fey likes it like it's a kid's show. It's like there's the local news guy, newswoman, Pat Battle. There's something about like it feels very Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood or something. So I think that's maybe the appeal of it.
I also think that there's this idea that New York is just this like crazy metropolis and it's
Yeah.
impersonal and people are rude. But when you live here, you actually find these little neighborhoods that are like little villages. You know,
Definitely.
you see a lot of the same people all the time. You do get to know your neighbors. New Yorkers are incredibly friendly. And I think New Yorkers do appreciate when New York becomes a small town. Like
Absolutely.
snowstorms
And it
and things that kind of bring us, like, have us huddle
Snow
together.
will do it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's not that hard. New York can be rendered a small town by some snow one morning. And you know your local news anchors to play off of Robin Scherbatsky and Tina Fey's observation. Like New York One, that dude, Pat Kiernan. Shout out to Pat Kiernan. I think he's still on there. And I remember he followed me on Twitter or something. We followed each other. And I remember interacting with him. I think he said he liked How I Met Your Mother at some point. And it felt like it felt like Brad Pitt saying that. I was like, this is fucking Pat Kiernan. Like, I've been watching him on New York One for 20 years. Yeah. Like, it's a legitimate, that you can achieve legitimate celebrity status. Everyone in New York knows what I'm talking about,
remember,
and other people on New York One.
Like, there were a couple of events I ended up going to in Columbus, like, where the local news people that I had been watching since I was a little kid, and they show up, and it is, I mean, it is really like Cher enters the room. Like, it is like, it is icon time, you know?
It's iconic, totally. Yeah. Even like the people you would see in Subway ads would become local celebrities, like Dr. Jonathan Zizmore, who would do your chemical peel on your skin. Fucking Dr. Z.
Yeah.
Like, the things that make New York a small town are delightful. And I think that's what Tina's talking about. And I think that's what Robin's job. I know Tina was talking about in Jersey, but it's the same idea. Like, there's something about taking a big place and making it small. And Robin's job was so small. And her detail, she was on shit detail of just looking at the stupidest little stories. She wanted to be taken seriously. But I think because she was your way into this like smaller version of New York, it was actually very charming.
Well, also,
and that shifted when she became an anchor.
To not be overwhelmed by New York, you have to make it smaller for yourself.
It has to be small.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
One phrase that we didn't talk about in the episode proper, that Jordy is trash. Sorry.
Why do you hate Jordy so much, Alek?
I'm sorry. I don't want to get into it. Jordy just wants us to talk a little bit about TEDing out. This was what did you think of this little nugget in the show?
I thought it was tegendary.
It was tegendary. My son's a phrase that I'm heartbroken we didn't use. Yeah, I thought the fact that they loved Ted enough to have him as a verb and like different verb conjugations and meanings, it felt very warm to me. It felt like they loved Ted, and and Ted didn't seem to take it too hard. Right. Any jokes where this group shares history, I love it. Where they know Ted's story verbatim, they do stuff like that. Like, I think it's very affectionate, and who better to take the piss out of you and give you shit than the people who love you the most.
I also think there's something about being in a group of people, maybe friends, maybe just coworkers or whatever. I think we have a tendency to think of ourselves as the normal one. Like, we're the normal person, and everyone
we're turning the camera like Jim on The Office.
Yeah. And everyone around us is a little eccentric and crazy, but we're like pretty normal. And it's one of those moments where you go, oh, you guys have a verb about me? Because I'm what? I do what? Like, sometimes we need that reflection back. Like, oh, you're also one of the like crazy cast of characters.
I'm the wacky guy in your sitcom.
Yeah.
I'm
yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. I think that's what that moment said to me, you know?
_Keenan99 has a great question. And we are trying not to talk about, we're not talking about the future of this episode. A lot of people, by the way, online have kind of been asking this question. Wait a second, are you guys really not doing any spoilers? And I think the answer is we're trying not to. People hopefully are watching the show for the first time. Yes, you can go Google all the answers, but, don't. And we're certainly not going to be at fault. But so I don't know if you can answer.
I feel like that's 0.001% of this audience is people watching it for the first time. So we may be overcorrecting just to acknowledge that. But some people are watching it for the first time. We're trying not to ruin
it for Elliot, basically.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
But Keenan says, throughout the run of the show, was there a break in case of emergency plan to wrap the show quickly? Had things been pulled by surprise with only one season left?
Was there a contingency plan about like, let's wrap it up real quick in season 3? No, we were too arrogant. We were like, there's no fucking way. We're like, you don't get an ending. There's no way. You don't want to have that. It was like, let us find a way to end it. I dare you to cancel us, kind of thing. So we, thank God people started watching the show and Netflix put it on, and the audience grew in the middle because we got to actually get to the end.
All right. Well, those are our questions here for... I've lost track of what we're talking about, but the episode we're talking about, Matchmaker.
Episode 7, the Matchmaker.
Matchmaker.
Cockamouse. We should rename it Cockamouse. We're renaming episodes left and right here. We renamed the pilot. This one should be called the Cockamouse, let's be honest, if we're being real about it.
Then maybe the name of our podcast episode will honor Cockamouse rather than...
Yeah, I think we can do a little retcon titling. And on that note.
All right, so keep your questions coming on Instagram and on Facebook and on even in the comments and YouTube. We're reading those, and online and everywhere you get your comments, you can leave them for us.
I am guilty, please acquit me. All sins are forgiven in New York City.
How We Made Your Mother is hosted and executive produced by Josh Radnor and Craig Thomas. The show is produced by me, Alek Lev, and our co-producer is Doug Matica. Our audio producer and mixer is Alex Reeves at Point of Blue Studios. Artwork by John Morrow. Please follow, rate, and review the show on Apple Podcasts or your podcast player of choice. It really does help the show. Our theme song is NYC by our own Josh Radnor. Special thanks to Lola Kennedy and Elliot Connors. Visit howwemadeyourmother.com to sign up for our Substack mailing list and for links to our social media. You can also click on the contact page to send us an email or a voice message. Your stories and questions are an important part of the show. Subscribe to Josh Radnor's newsletters on Substack. Read Craig Thomas's published prose at craigthomaswriter.com. And you can subscribe to my Dead Fathers Society, also on Substack. To learn about how you make a difference, this show's ongoing campaign to raise money for congenital heart disease research, check out the Make a Difference tab at the top of our website. This episode was made possible by the support of Backyard Ventures, marketing provided by Tink Media. People will, in fact, dance.
The real question, it just hit me. Am I in love with you or just New York City?